All right, so we're going to do this checkpoint one review. I just wanted to go over some of the questions that you all struggled with a little bit, just because we need to know these things for going forward, and also they will be on, some of them will be on checkpoint two also. So first one was emotion regulation. There was a lot of examples on checkpoint one regarding emotion regulation. This is when we're talking about reappraisal, we're talking about reducing our nervous system response, and a variety of techniques for managing emotion. Dr. Dalal's research that was described in Perusall, as well as Dr. Goldstein's research described in Perusall, were both explain the theme of applying psychological principles can improve our lives, organizations, and communities. So often some of the examples of how we apply psychological principles, right? Now, certainly they could also be used with a different, explained with a different lens. So, for example, we might think about the theme psychological, biological, social, and cultural influences impact our mental processes and behavior. And we could think about how the psychological part is the thinking part about reappraisal and cognitive and reframing situations in our mind to help regulate our emotions, right? And then the biological part would be related to our nervous system being dysregulated, getting set off into fight. And social and culture is to express and manage our emotions through our culture and our social world. So with this kind of topic, emotion regulation is something that we're learning about, but we're learning about it from a lot of different angles, right? Emotion is key in many different areas of human thoughts, feelings, and behavior. And so you can talk about it through the lens of culture, and talk about it through the lens of our nervous system. We can talk about it about our brain and our psychology and tools to apply to lives. So again, approach those things or those questions, right? Learning styles. Most of you did pretty well on this, but I just thought I would revisit it here because there's definitely still some misconceptions. One of the questions was why the concept persists. And so this is something we mostly discussed in class, although I'm pretty sure we had it in one of the readings as well. But you got to think about things like cognitive bias, like confirmation bias, right? So even us talking about it in class, talking about learning styles means it's sort of on your mind, even if it's not conscious. And then now you're going to go out in the world and you might actually confirm your belief through that bias by looking for evidence unconsciously sometimes and just, oh, I really am a visual learner. And the reality is that's a bias. And the reason, and that's it's so tangible, this idea that we all have learning styles are, it makes a lot of sense for us. So that's why it sticks around, right? People don't want to let go of it. The harder work of studying and learning in ways like retrieval practice and distributed learning, things we'll dive into even more next week. Those are the things that are a little bit harder to they're not just, oh yeah, when I remember something, now I know it better, right? The visual learner kind of thing sticks to us a little bit better. So even though that's not a really useful way of looking at it, it sticks around. So the real question is it harmful, right? Is it really misinformation, disinformation, a myth? Is it just a waste of time? Just no real point in doing it. Many think there is some harm there because if teachers really believe this, they also believe that some learning styles are better than others or more intelligent than others, and that can then create more biases in the classroom in terms of how they're thinking of different students. So again, there is a possibility for harm for sure, and there's also a possibility that students, like if you believe you're a visual learner and then your teacher is mostly just talking, and then you might just be like, oh, well, I can't learn in this classroom. And that's not actually true. So there's a lot more that you need to do. It's not just about what the teacher's doing or what your brain is reacting to it, you can really take a lot more control. And again, that's why these learning style thing is sometimes persistent, because it's easier. Taking control and knowing that you have control over it is actually a little bit harder. All right, question about psychologists and what they do and where they work. This was a real tough one for a lot of folks. So psychologists, we know they work as in academic settings as teachers. Now you know that they, because I am one, right? We also know that they are researchers, something we've learned in this class, even if you didn't know it already. Most of you came in probably knowing that psychologists also work in mental health settings, right? What you may not have known, and what many folks don't know, is that they also work in workplaces, organizations. Industrial organizational psychology is a whole field of work where applied psychologists are in organizations helping teamwork, helping with diversity, helping with fair employment practices. Human factors and engineering psychology is in all sorts of organizations as well, and looking at things like user interface and things like that. So lots of places that psychologists work, very many places that they don't work. Question about illusions and perceptions. A lot of folks answered this saying that usually our perception is inaccurate, and my guess is because of the perceptions and biases theme. This has gotten out as a thing that we actually aren't really good at perception, and the truth is we actually are very good at perception. We're usually quite accurate with our senses and our perception, but at the same time, our prior knowledge and our experiences and our expectations, most importantly, do influence our perceptions. So the visual illusions are an example of that, because if we expect to see something, our brain sees it, right? So that's just a very sharp example of how our expectations can influence it. But then it's also true in those more squishy situations where you're coming in and saying, I've got expectations about what's going to happen in this situation. I think you're not going to like me very much. And then that'll influence how I perceive your behavior. All right, this one, humans are not very good at judging emotion in others. I think the only time we talked about this one was in class, which is probably why so many people struggled with it. The reality is you're held responsible for things in class as well. Even if you're not there, you got to make sure you listen to those recordings and review the slides. But we think we're good at judging people's emotions, but we're really not. And this is something that was important to talk about, because it really has implications for everyday life and relationships. We think somebody's feeling something and we react a certain way because of it. And that can really affect our relationships if we think we're better than we are at it. And then it also has some real serious implications in the courtroom when you think about it, right? So if a jury thinks that they can decide whether somebody's feeling remorse or not, and then that impacts the sentence, it's pretty important. So think if you can think of any other examples of that in your life, or whether it's important. All right, and finally, the key themes. So most of you did a great job with those essays. A couple of them were more struggles than others. Basically, for those essays, we were looking for you to use words other than the theme, and to really break down the theme like you did in Journal 2. So what we're going to do for Checkpoint 2 is we're going to do that concept map on paper as part of the checkpoint to break it down and look into different words. You can choose which theme you're going to use, but you really do need to keep learning all 7 of the themes. So for each one, you should be able to provide a couple of examples. We have given you many examples in those perusal readings of the themes. We've also talked a lot about different examples in class. And on the Padlet for Journal 2, you all provided a lot of good examples as well. So with your concept map that you're going to do, just like you did for Journal 2, you can pick which theme it's going to be for. Again, this is the example I provided for Journal 2. Things we're going to be looking for are the text of the key theme should be written out, and we will have them for you to choose from, so you don't have to remember every single word there. At least 4 main boxes or bubbles. So for this one, I've got the box of or the bubble of ethical principles, and then I've got guide in the middle, and then I've got research and practice in boxes, and then several other branches, some indicating direction. So you can, these are supposed to, a concept map and a mind map, these are like, how are you thinking about it, right? You're just putting your thoughts into this format. So think about, like, where do you go from here? If you put down the word guide, where are you going from there? That's why all around it I've got words like leader, path, ruler, right? So it's really how I was thinking about it. So show us how you're thinking. There isn't anything wrong. You're not going to do these wrong if you don't, unless you just don't do the things. So at least 4 main boxes or bubbles, and then several branches, and at least one example. So in mine, I've got an example under practice of education and therapy, and then I've got examples around the research of animal research and protecting participants and informed consent. So it doesn't have to be long, drawn out examples, but just examples of these things at work in the world. So here's some student ones that I had pulled from Journal 2 that I liked, and I apologize, I don't have names on them. So if they're yours, please show me. These two were from the Just Society's theme. And you can see how one just has 4 boxes around the main theme with details in each box. And the other one looks a little more like mine with lots of branching. Both are great. How are you thinking about it? Here's another one of student work. Again, let me know if it's yours. So this is an example of the ecological science one. So just to kind of give you all a feel for what you should be doing. And again, don't copy it from others. Show us how your mind is working. And you can prepare this ahead of time and know which theme you're doing and go ahead and put it down. We just want to show that you're thinking through the themes. And that's it.